I'm here with Luciano Calestini, the UNICEF country representative in Greece, who's here to update us on the situation of the refugee crisis in the country and what's happening on the education front. Luciano is a very good friend to Theirworld. He previously was posted in Lebanon, where he organized the double shift school response on behalf of UNICEF and the UN system. So we've been partnering in many different countries throughout the years. And so we're really happy to speak with you today, Luciano. Thanks for agreeing to answer a few questions for us and give us an update.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks for having me.
Of course. I think the first thing that we're all keen to know is what's the current situation for refugee education in Greece? What's going on?
So, I mean, the sad reality is that it remains challenging. I mean, despite the efforts of many actors, I mean, Theirworld, UNICEF, all of our respective partners, and many others who are active in the education sector, but not our partners, the numbers still tell a somewhat discouraging story. I mean, if we look at the last couple of school years, the enrollment rate of refugee and migrant children was just above 40%. Which is pretty low. It's pretty low. That means that around 20,000 children are not enrolled in a public school. Some of those have access to non-formal education, but as we know, that's no substitute. That's not an end goal to sitting in a classroom next to your peers and walking away with a certificate at the end. And of course, the coronavirus pandemic hasn't helped. I mean, it's made things tragically worse, where I think it's fair to say that around 1 in 5 of those enrolled only have consistently attended school. So we are talking about, you know, a pretty modest fraction of refugee and migrant children in the country reliably and predictably attending formal education. And on the islands, it's even worse. There, the numbers attending public schools are literally in the single digits, less than 10. There is more predictability, I would say, in terms of access to non-formal education, but really, given the context there, the only real hope we have for children on the islands to be enrolled in formal schools is for them ultimately to be moved to the mainland. So the magic number for us at the moment, our goal is 33,000 children. That is how many refugee and migrant school-age children are in Greece nationwide.
Great. No, thank you for that overview. You mentioned the coronavirus, and I know that about a year ago, Theirworld, Education Cannot Wait, and the players, the Dutch Postcode Lottery, came together and worked with you all to provide support for the COVID-19 response package. Did that make a difference? What impact did that work have?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you mentioned in your intro, we've been partners here for coming up to 2 years, I think it is, and together with obviously Theirworld and Education Cannot Wait, the Dutch Postcode Lottery, many other investors, let's say. And specifically in terms of this partnership, which started, I believe, in summer of 2019, July or August 2019, you can rest assured that over 2,000 children, roughly 2,500 children, have received access to education. This was even before the pandemic. And that's ebbed and flowed depending on the circumstances and the freedom of movement that the pandemic obviously restricts. But 2,500 children are better off and have had access to learning because of this partnership, and for that we're very grateful. In terms of the coronavirus response specifically, most of that support was used to provide messaging in 6 different languages around how to stay safe to children and families, and we reached over 30,000 children with that 6 language messaging. And also it was used to produce learning materials for those who are able to study remotely, for those for whom movement was just simply not possible because of the lockdown, as we have seen all over the world. So yeah, so we're deeply grateful for that. I mean, in terms of the Lesbos response specifically, and I mean the fire has become an infamous event last September. That was where the bulk of the non-formal education support was allocated, because the needs there were just so high.
You know, the situation I know on the islands has been quite grave, especially after the fire. Could you talk a bit about what the response will be moving forward? And I know there are some of the education centers that have been set up on the islands, and what the model will be for providing education in those locations. As you say, before refugees move to the mainland, where you're hopeful that will be the more sustainable solution.
I mean, it's been a wild 6 months, I must say. So the immediate response after the fire, which was in early September, and for those unaware, the fire pretty much destroyed the previous camp in Lesbos, on the island of Lesbos. It was called Moria, and so Moria is no more. And at the time, the 12,000 people fled and congregated at a new site, which was extremely quickly put up by the Greek authorities with support from UNHCR, IOM, ourselves, many other, including many NGOs. So the priority in those first few weeks was food, water, and shelter. As the dust kind of settled, then we moved into resuming, or I would more correctly say, expanding non-formal education. We wanted to build back much better than what was on offer to refugee children in the previous camp in Moria. So we were pretty quickly up to around 1,000 children a day receiving non-formal education. That includes with the support from Theirworld and your partners. But then again, there were a few variables that hampered us. One of them was, of course, the coronavirus, because there were flare-ups every now and then. There were new cases inside and obviously outside the camp as well, so that limited movement. The other huge issue was that the area of the site that is still in the same location today. It's a place called Karetepe, or Mavruvuni. People mostly refer to it as Mavruvuni. It's not huge. And so obviously priority has to be given to health facilities, to residential tents, to trucks who are moving constantly around the location, building, and that is still going on today. So we were quite limited in where we could situate the response. And for that reason, the numbers kind of reached a natural threshold, and that threshold was determined by how many mobile teams we could field, doing 1 or 2 hour sessions, moving constantly around the site, so that instead of having one zone where there was a non-formal education center, it was pockets that children would come 20, 30, 40 at a time. So that was a big constraint as well. And then the other, you mentioned centers outside the main site. The most well-known of those, I believe, is one that we call the Tapuat Center, which is a few kilometers up the hill from the seaside where the current refugee site is. And the issue there is that from the night of the fire, UNICEF had been hosting over 200 extremely vulnerable children and women all through the center. So there was not a spare corner of space available. And that was only vacated around 6 weeks ago. So now it is again available to be used for non-formal education activities. There is a site or a location rather in the main site that is also earmarked for use. And we're also looking at another partnership for a local Greek NGO to go to a third location in the center of the town of Mytilene, which is the nearest large residential center to the site. So when all of that is added together, I think we'll comfortably be able to reach once again 1,000 children a day between the two locations outside the site and inside the site. But it has been a rocky road. because we're being competing with all the other needs and all the other priorities in a very restricted number of square meters that we had to work with, and a space that is still, in many respects, under construction.
Right now, I think the ability to sort of innovate and act and respond in real time is of a premium, especially of all of these new hurdles coming up. It seems like every other day there's something new that you have to deal with. So well done on that front. One of the reasons I wanted to speak with you, Luciano, is we're coming up on the year anniversary of when our team at Theirworld came over. We did some work with the UN agencies, with the government, and with the NGOs to sort of map out what a blueprint could look like to provide education in a more comprehensive manner, in a more sustainable, predictable manner for refugee children in Greece. And we had the 3-point plan, which was, first of all, obviously the COVID response and adapting to that, making sure we deliver non-formal education, and then looking at integration into the public school system for refugees. I was wondering if you could sort of update us, since that plan was put forward, where are we now, and what's happening on the ground to take that forward?
So, I mean, that proved to be really invaluable work, and it's, I mean, it's so important to set down an evidence-based foundation to carry forward discussions. I mean, these decisions take time, and they involve many institutions and many actors. So for us, that proved to be a really important launch pad for what happened next. And what happened next is that we took that report towards the end of last year. It was around October, November, and we articulated into a more detailed operational plan of how we can actually get this thing up and running, keeping in mind the challenges that we've talked about before. We need to get 33,000 children into school. That is the challenge at its core. And so we've been involved in constant discussion with the two responsible line ministries for this. That is obviously the Ministry of Education, and in Greece it's also the Ministry of Migration and Asylum. So those two ministries have a dual accountability, not just for children, but in general to ensure that that services are provided to this entire population on the move. And I'm very confident that we're very close to getting an agreement. So we have now a clear plan that elaborates what I like to call a pathway to formal education, keeping in mind that non-formal education is great as a stopgap measure, but does not substitute for a formal learning, as we all know from so many places around the world. So this is a plan that considers ensuring all children are school ready, because many are not school ready. Language is obviously one of the biggest obstacles, and then transitioning those over time once they reach a certain level of school readiness into the formal system. And at that point, obviously, it's predominantly the Ministry of Education that has the mandate and the jurisdiction to provide that service to them. So we're I hope days away from getting a signature on this plan. It has a target of no less than 100% of refugee and migrant children, again 33,000, and the total price tag that we have estimated over a 3-year period is around 34 million euro, which sounds like a big number, but it actually works out to around €1 per child per day. And when it's broken down in that way, I mean, it's a very reasonable number to ensure that a child has his or her right to education guaranteed over a period of 3 years. And one of the reasons we feel that this investment is so critical is that no matter where these children end up, whether they remain in Greece for an indefinite period, whether other EU member states agreed to accept them in the case where they're alone, or them and their families, and they're relocated to other countries, whether they're Germany or Portugal or Bulgaria or wherever they may be, or whether some of them end up going back to their countries of origin. This investment in them is something that they will carry with them forever. It can never be taken away. and it will be used with them wherever they may be. And the converse is not to be even considered, which is that children would spend year after year not receiving any kind of education, and the cost of that will be obviously on them and on the broader community far, far higher than €1 per child per day for the next 3 years.
It's such a powerful number, €1 per child per day. And I know we've been doing some work behind the scenes together to try to make sure we can find funding and unlock that funding for this initiative. Do you have any insights on where we might be with the European Commission, which is sort of the likely funder, given that we are talking about refugees in Greece?
Yeah, I mean, they certainly are the biggest player, and we are in discussion with them. It's still uncertain where precisely, which commission even funding could or would come from. And it's important to keep in mind that the entire EU institution is moving into a new 7-year funding cycle across all of the European Union. So this is just one of hundreds, if not thousands, of priorities that need to land somewhere. So having said that, I mean, I'm confident that somewhere within the EU machinery, whether it be DG Home, which is the commission that we are most naturally engaged with on the refugee and migrant issue, or another, I'm confident that there will be a positive response in the months ahead. But that doesn't preclude any other partner from also participating. That money doesn't all have to come from Brussels, it can come from anywhere. The important thing is that we, through a range of different partnerships, are able to secure that 11 or 12 million per year for 3 years. And with that, I'm very confident that we can solve this problem.
Great. No, we're working hard on that together, and we look forward to sort of taking that forward and making sure that happens. Is there anything else, Luciano, that you think is important for folks to know about refugee education in Greece and any of the next steps over the coming months?
I mean, I guess just to reiterate what I was pointing out earlier, which is that, you know, once the essentials of life have been provided, food, shelter, water, medical assistance, and I'm probably biased because I have my invisible UNICEF hat on, but the value of investing in a child's education cannot be calculated, both for the life and the future prospects of that boy or girl, but also to the contribution that boy or girl can make to their community, wherever that community may be. So I would just really urge Theirworld and ECW and the Dutch Lottery and all these other, you know, pantheon of partners who even may have a vague interest to get involved. Please think about it. We're talking about children's lives and children's futures, and I mean, we hear so often all of these numbers, and we see all these, you know, all these stories on the evening news, but I mean, these are individuals, and these are people just like my daughter. My daughter's 11 years old, yeah, and she's in a school in the UK, and when I meet these children who are, you know, been out of school for months and sometimes years, and I think about her as any parent would. You transpose yourself into that situation and wonder how you would react and what your response would be to these international organizations who come in and out, and I would be angry, you know, I would be angry, and I would demand that my daughter has access to quality education. And I think that the children that we see and the parents that are doing their best for them are no different to you and me and anybody watching. So that would be, I guess, my parting thought would be just to remember these children. They're not nameless, they're not faceless, they're not simply numbers. They are individuals who have every hope for a prosperous and stable and safe future, as any of us do. and they have a right to it. We've all signed up to it in the Convention on Child Rights, remember state. So they're not asking for a favor, they're simply asking that their legal right to accessing learning is fulfilled by all of us grown-ups. And that's what I would say.
Great. Luciano, thanks so much for speaking with me today. And we look forward to taking this forward and having a big success for those 33,000 children who we need to, as you say, get them their right to education, realize that right. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Justin.